The board voted unanimously. "You're out, effective immediately," my best friend Jessica said, sitting in my chair behind my desk in the office I'd built from nothing, her manicured fingers steepled with practiced corporate menace. "You were always the ideas person, Vivian. We're the business people. The company has evolved beyond the need for constant innovation. It needs leadership now." She smiled as she delivered the killing blow, and I noticed she was wearing the smartwatch prototype IED designed, the one that had secured our Series B funding, the one that had made this company worth $47 million. But why did I smile back instead of crying, and why did her confident expression falter when I pulled out my phone and showed her the patent filing date? "You really should have checked the incorporation documents first," I said. The color drained from Jessica's face. "What are you talking about? We restructured the equity last year. I signed documents transferring operational control during my sabbatical. I didn't sign anything transferring the intellectual property rights." I set my phone on the desk, the patent registration clearly visible. "Every design, every prototype, every piece of technology this company sells, it's mine. Personally. Not the company's. Not the board's. Mine." Her hand moved instinctively to the smartwatch on her wrist, my smartwatch. "That's impossible. Our lawyers reviewed everything." "Your lawyers reviewed the corporate documents. They apparently didn't review my original founder's agreement, the one Marcus drafted before we brought in outside counsel." I smiled. "The one that specifically retained all intellectual property rights in my name, with licensing agreements to the company that can be revoked under certain conditions." "What conditions?" "Termination of the founder without cause." I leaned forward. "You just triggered the revocation clause. Congratulations." The company had started in my garage 5 years earlier. I'd been a hardware engineer at a major tech firm, frustrated by bureaucracy and eager to build something that mattered. The smartwatch concept had come to me during a late night of insomnia, a device that could monitor health metrics with unprecedented accuracy, predict potential issues before they became emergencies, and do it all with elegant design. I'd built the first prototype myself, working nights and weekends for 8 months. Jessica had been my best friend since college, a business major who'd gone into consulting while I'd pursued engineering. When I'd shown her the prototype, she'd immediately seen its potential. "This could be huge. You need business expertise to scale it." "I don't know anything about running a company." "That's what I'm for. Partners?" We'd shaken hands that night. I believed we were building something together. I hadn't realized she was building her exit strategy from day one. Marcus had been Jessica's addition to the team. A lawyer friend she'd known since business school, someone who could handle the legal side while we focused on product and growth. He drafted our incorporation documents, our partnership agreements, all the foundational paperwork that would govern our company. What I hadn't known was that Marcus had also quietly drafted a separate document, at my request, ostensibly, that retained my IP rights independently of the corporate structure. Except I hadn't requested it. Marcus had done it on his own. Insurance, he told me later, after I discovered the document existed. "Jessica's played games with business partners before. I wanted you protected." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have told Jessica, and she would have found a way around it. Some protections only work if the other side doesn't know they exist." Marcus had been right. If Jessica had known about the IP clause, she would have maneuvered around it years ago. The board that voted me out consisted of Jessica, 2 investors she'd cultivated, and an independent director who happened to be her former business school professor. They'd planned the coup during my 3-month sabbatical, time I'd taken after burnout from leading the company through our Series B fundraising. I'd needed to recover, to reconnect with the creativity that had built everything we'd achieved. They'd seen opportunity in my absence. "She's not essential anymore," Jessica had apparently argued to the board. "The product line is established. The technology is documented. We don't need a founder who wants to keep innovating when we need to focus on scaling existing products," the investors had been persuaded. The professor had voted however Jessica told him to vote. 4-0. Unanimous. They'd thought they were removing an obstacle. They'd actually triggered a nuclear option they hadn't known existed. Jessica's recovery took approximately 30 seconds. "Even if what you're saying is true, we can negotiate. The company has resources. We can buy the IP rights, you can't afford them. We raised $47 million. The IP is worth considerably more than $47 million. It's the foundation of every product you sell, every contract you've signed, every projection you've made to investors. Without it, this company has nothing. You're bluffing. Call your lawyers." "I'll wait." She did. The call lasted 20 minutes, during which her expression deteriorated from confident to concerned to something approaching panic. "They're saying there might be an issue with the IP ownership structure. They need time to review, they need time to figure out how badly you've miscalculated." I stood, gathering my personal items from the office I'd apparently already lost. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to walk out of this building. You're going to have an emergency board meeting. And then someone is going to call me with a very different proposal than "you're out." You can't just. I can. I own the intellectual property. Without it, you have an empty shell company with $47 million in obligations and nothing to sell. I stopped at the door. Next time you plan a coup, check all the paperwork first. The call came 4 hours later. Not from Jessica, she was apparently too proud or too angry to reach out directly. From David Chen, our lead investor, whose $30 million was suddenly looking very precarious. Ms. Ashford, I think there's been a misunderstanding. There's been no misunderstanding. The board voted to remove me. The removal triggered a clause in my founder's agreement. The clause revokes the company's license to my intellectual property. Perhaps we can discuss. We can discuss my terms for resolving this situation. But I should be clear, I have no interest in returning to a company that voted unanimously to remove me. The relationship with the current leadership is irreparably damaged. What terms would you consider? I'll have my lawyer send them over tomorrow. You'll want to review them carefully. The terms were comprehensive. First, Jessica's immediate removal from any leadership position. She could remain as a shareholder but would have no operational role. Second, the 2 investor board members who voted against me would be replaced with independent directors of my choosing. Third, I would return as CEO with full authority over product development and strategic direction. Fourth, the company would pay me $2.3 million in damages for the wrongful termination, symbolic, but important. Fifth, Jessica would issue a public apology for attempting to steal my work. The terms were designed to be unacceptable to Jessica personally while being completely rational for the company's survival. David Chen understood this immediately. Ms. Patterson won't agree to these terms. Particularly the public apology. Then the company can enter bankruptcy proceedings and I'll license my IP to your competitors. That would destroy everyone's investment, including your own shares. I own the IP. I can rebuild. You can't. I let that sink in. The question is whether the investors want to sacrifice their $47 million to preserve Jessica's pride, or whether they want to salvage their investment by accepting my terms. The investor revolt happened within 48 hours. David Chen and the other major investors had reviewed the situation with their own lawyers. The conclusion was unambiguous: without the IP rights, the company was worthless. The only path to salvaging their investment was accepting my terms. Jessica received the news in what I later learned was a brutal conference call. The board is being reconstituted. You're being removed from your operational role. Ms. Ashford is returning as CEO. You can't do this. I built this company. You built a company on intellectual property you didn't own. You attempted to remove the person who did own it. This is the consequence. I'll sue. You'll lose. Every lawyer we've consulted has confirmed that the IP clause is valid and enforceable. Your options are accepting the restructuring or watching the company collapse while Ms. Ashford licenses her technology to competitors. Jessica called me directly that night. You planned this? From the beginning. I didn't plan anything. Marcus included protective language in my founder's agreement because he'd seen you operate before. I didn't even know about it until last year. You kept it secret. I kept it as insurance. The same way you kept your plans to remove me secret until you executed them. We were building something together. I thought we were partners. Partners don't vote each other out unanimously. Partners don't sit in each other's chairs wearing prototypes they couldn't have built themselves. Partners don't tell each other they're not needed anymore. The company needed different leadership. The company needed my IP. Still does. The difference between us is that I understood what I brought to the partnership and you apparently didn't. The restructuring happened over the following month. Jessica was removed from all operational roles, retaining only her equity stake, now significantly diluted by the rescue financing required to stabilize the company after the crisis she created. The board was reconstituted with genuinely independent directors, people with no prior relationship to either Jessica or me. I returned as CEO, implementing changes I'd wanted for years but had been blocked from making by Jessica's business expertise. The company didn't just survive. It thrived. The irony of the smartwatch Jessica had been wearing during the coup was particularly satisfying. That prototype, the one on her wrist as she told me I wasn't needed, was the Series 3 model I'd designed during my sabbatical. The break she'd used as an opportunity to remove me had actually been my most productive creative period in years. The Series 3 had features competitors couldn't match for at least 18 months. It became our best-selling product, generating revenue that transformed the company's trajectory. The innovation Jessica had dismissed as unnecessary was what made the company worth saving. Marcus, the lawyer who'd protected me without my knowledge, became our general counsel. Why did you do it? I asked him once, after everything had settled. You were Jessica's friend first. Why protect me from her? Because I'd seen what she did to her previous business partners. A marketing agency she co-founded in her 20s, she forced out the creative founder once the company was established, kept all the equity, ran it into the ground within 2 years. I didn't know about that. She doesn't advertise her failures. But I saw it happen, and I saw the pattern. She finds creative people, rides their talent until she can take control, then discards them. And you decided to prevent that? I decided to give you the tools to prevent it yourself. The IP clause was always there. You just needed the trigger to activate it. The public apology was the hardest term for Jessica to accept. She fought it until the investors made clear that her remaining equity would be worthless if she didn't comply. The apology was delivered through a press release, corporate and cold, but technically fulfilling the requirement. I regret any actions that may have harmed my former business partner or the company we built together. I acknowledge that the intellectual property underlying our products belongs to Vivian Ashford, and I apologize for any confusion regarding ownership or credit. It wasn't sincere. Everyone knew it wasn't sincere. But it was public. It was permanent. And it established the historical record correctly. Jessica eventually sold her equity stake and disappeared from the tech industry. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she moved into consulting, advising startups on scaling strategies without mentioning her own spectacular failure. I hoped her clients would do their due diligence. I suspected most wouldn't. The company went public 3 years after the attempted coup. The IPO valued us at $340 million, 7 times what we'd been worth when Jessica tried to remove me. My equity stake, protected by the documents Marcus had drafted, made me genuinely wealthy for the first time in my life. The smartwatch line had expanded to include 4 models. The health monitoring technology had been licensed to major healthcare providers. The innovation Jessica had dismissed as unnecessary had become our competitive advantage. I think about that day in my office sometimes. Jessica sitting in my chair, wearing my prototype, telling me I wasn't needed anymore. The confidence in her voice, the certainty that she'd won. You were always the ideas person. We're the business people. She'd meant it as dismissal, as if ideas were somehow lesser than business acumen. As if the person who created the technology was less valuable than the people who sold it. She'd been wrong. Ideas were everything. Without them, there was nothing to sell. The lesson I learned from Jessica's betrayal has shaped everything since. I hire carefully now, checking backgrounds and talking to former partners. I structure agreements with protective clauses, assuming that relationships might fail even when they seem solid. I trust but verify, extending faith while maintaining safeguards. That's cynical, someone told me once. It's realistic. I had a best friend try to steal my life's work while wearing it on her wrist. Cynicism is just pattern recognition at this point. Marcus became more than our general counsel over the years. He became a genuine friend, someone who'd protected me before I knew I needed protection, who'd seen danger I'd been blind to, who'd acted on principle rather than loyalty. Do you ever regret it? I asked him once. Going against Jessica? She was your friend first. She was someone I knew. Friendship requires mutual respect. What she planned to do to you, that wasn't respect. That was predation. You could have stayed neutral. Neutral means watching someone get hurt when you have the power to prevent it. That's not neutral. That's complicit. He shrugged. I'd rather be a good person than a neutral one. The smartwatch on my wrist as I write this is the Series 7, our most advanced model yet. Each version builds on the foundation I created in my garage, the late-night inspiration that became a company worth hundreds of millions. The technology that Jessica wore while telling me I wasn't needed anymore. She was wrong about so many things. But she was most wrong about what makes a company valuable. It's not the business people. It's not the scaling strategies or the investor relationships or the corporate governance. It's the ideas. It's always been the ideas. And those were mine. She sat in my chair, wearing my prototype, telling me the board had voted me out. You were always the ideas person, she said, like that was an insult. We're the business people. But she hadn't checked the incorporation documents, the ones that kept all intellectual property rights in my name, revocable if I was terminated without cause. She'd just triggered the clause that would destroy everything she'd tried to steal. The company that didn't need me anymore couldn't survive without my IP. The smartwatch on her wrist was mine, legally, completely, irrevocably mine. She'd planned a coup. She'd executed a catastrophe. And when the investors forced her out to save their $47 million, she learned what every business person eventually learns: without ideas, there's nothing to do business with.